All right, everybody, if you don't mind, let's quiet down. We're going to get started. What he said. Cliff, I think it would be a good idea for us to turn this monster fan off, and if we need it, we'll get back into it. So everyone, thanks for coming out. My name is James Glasscock. I am one of the co-founders of DNA Fund. Really happy all of you are here. I'm going to run through a little admin and some thank yous real quick, and then I'm going to turn it over to our first moderator, Pamela Day. She'll introduce her panel. We'll get the show on the road. A few things. If you're wondering about DNA, what DNA does, one way to do that is to follow the DNA community Telegram feed. Get on Telegram, it's DNA Community. You can find out about events like this. You can watch DNA on its current Asia Roadshow. I think they're either in Japan or Korea right now, raising money for companies. And you can find out how to submit companies and get involved in the community. I'm going to talk a lot about community in this session today because this is why we're here. Also, if you feel like hashtagging the event, it's hashtag DNA Wyoming. Yes, please. Okay, I'll get into it. Why are we here? Community. DNA moved into this location, I think, about 5 or 6 months ago from a much smaller location down the street, a penthouse, where we were essentially doing a lot of ICO pitches and inviting the community in. Since its inception, the founders, Brock Pierce and Scott Walker, were really kind of open, inviting folks in, inviting companies to come in and pitch, and it looked a lot like this. If you saw our other space, it was this beautiful, really kind of cool penthouse down the street, but about 10% of the size of this room, nearly with about as many people. So DNA has been about community since the beginning. The way I would articulate it is the people in this room represent the 0.5% of people on the planet that have taken the red pill. You're crypto, you've owned some, you might be trading it, you might be a superstar trader, you may have launched 5 or 6 companies, but you're the 0.5% on the planet. So how do we bring the other 99.5% of people on the planet into crypto and blockchain? I think it's community is going to be one of the ways that we do that. So thanks everyone for coming out. That's why we're doing this. Again, just follow DNA Community on Telegram if you want to find out about other cool stuff like this in the future. Real quick, I'll run through my stuff and then I'm going to turn it over to Pamela. I want to thank DNA for hosting this event, coordinating the event, especially Sam Kim, raise your hand, he's over here. Cliff Sarkin, the EVP of Business Development, and Barry Cliff is somewhere around here. Yeah, there he is. All right, cool. Cliff's also going to moderate a panel today, so he's going to get a lot of airtime. And Barry Watkins, who's on the Asia Roadshow. He's the head of community here at DNA. Definitely want to thank the moderators, Alon Gorin from Wavemaker Genesis. Alon, where are you? There he is back there. Cool guy. Has money to invest. Go see him. Pamela Day, the CEO of Paladin Trust. You're going to hear from Pamela. And Cliff Sarkin, also the EVP of Business Development at DNA Fund. Let's see. I really want to thank the attendees from Wyoming. There's probably 20 people who've come down to join us today. They did it on their own dime. They've come down to share so that we can all build a better relationship with what's going on in Wyoming. So I want to thank the participants, the senator, and everyone who's come down from Wyoming. We really appreciate you guys coming down to share time. For the folks, by the way, everyone who bought tickets, why did we do the ticket thing? We did it so that we could donate a little bit of money to the Wyoming Hackathon at the University of Wyoming in September. So I'm really excited about that. And I'll talk about a sponsor here in a minute who's also contributed to that. So we're supporting the University of Wyoming Hackathon in September. And that leads me to finally two more things. We've got an incredible menu and chef that's has Wyoming beef at the center of the menu, but don't worry if you're a vegetarian. We've got you covered. A lot of farmers market stuff going on there. That's Chef Michael Mansour. His company's called Convivial Spice. Go to convivialspice.com and buy his spices and all that good stuff. And then finally, I would just want to thank really our title sponsor, which is the law firm of Shoemaker Mallory, and specifically Charlie Shoemaker, Ben Yankowitz, and Emmanuel Orlando. Emmanuel, you're here somewhere. Yes, and they have another sort of part of the firm that's specifically focused on ICO stuff. So spend time with Emmanuel. You're going to get to hear about what they're working on. We've moved them to the front of the second panel. That being said, I'm going to shut up and turn it over to Pamela. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. I'm going to ask Rob to come and sit in my chair, and I'll stand over here. I'll stand back here. Terrific. Okay, hey everybody, I'm Pamela Day. I am the CEO of Paladin Trust. We're a digital custodian shop. We hold, manage, and hedge digital assets for pre-ICO companies, post-ICO companies, funds, individuals, and anyone who requires custodian services, which is pretty much all of you. Today, I have the great pleasure of moderating this panel, and I think James Glasscock was kind in letting me do this because he knows I've been obsessed with Wyoming for about 6 months, following their legislature and starting and actually registering one of Paladin's companies in Wyoming about 5 months ago. So I've been following this for a while. I am incredibly impressed and to have this esteemed group in front of me. I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but on July 1st of this year, the 5th of the 5 new blockchain laws will go into effect in the great state of Wyoming. The key initiators and contributors of this monumental legislation are here today with us. I'm going to give some quick rundown of everyone, and then we're going to launch right into it. Rob Jennings, directly to my right, is a Wyoming native. He's the CEO of BeefChain.io, which is a very interesting company we're going to hear about later on today. He's the co-founder of the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition, and he's the CEO of Blockchain LLC.io, and that's important because that's a registrant. If you want to register your company in Wyoming, that's the first place you're going to call. You're going to call this guy right here. Ask him for a card, okay? Senator Ogden Driskill is, from what I can tell, the epitome of Wyoming. He is Wyoming. Look at this guy. I love this guy. He's amazing. He's a 6th generation Wyoming rancher. Unbelievable. From the photographs of the most beautiful ranch I've ever seen. He is the co-sponsor and author of the blockchain bills that we're going to talk about today, and a co-founder of BeefChain. He is really the driving force, or one of the driving forces behind all of this change happening in Wyoming. So an incredible resource for us today. Thank you. David Pope is a CPA and a chartered management accountant with over 2,000 clients located in the great state of Wyoming. He's also a co-founder of the Blockchain Coalition and currently serves as its CEO. So he has lots and lots of networked contacts, lawyers and other folks that he's working with, constantly doing outreach for the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition, and he's going to talk about that today. And Krista Pontius is a digital consultant who, like me, became interested in what Wyoming was doing, drove up from Denver, and became an interested and active advisor in the blockchain bills there. She's also currently working on BeefChain. So with that, folks, what I want to start with is let's educate the group with the 5 laws that literally tectonic shift in Wyoming laws, right? And the first in the nation. Walk us through the 5 laws. Give us some bullet points.
Hello, everyone. David Pope here. And first thing I'd like to say is we have a very full house, so congratulations. You just qualified as a medium-sized city in Wyoming. Okay, so when we're talking the bills, we had... everyone hear me okay? Okay, so when you're talking the bills, we've got 5 main bills, and I'll run through them real quick. House Bill 19 exempted cryptocurrencies from the Money Transmitters Act in Wyoming, and that...
Think about that, folks. Exempt from money transmitters.
Yes. and I would never say anything bad about California. You guys have been such wonderful hosts here. But anyway, so then the second one was House Bill 70. So House Bill 70 was the qualified token exemption, which exempts consumptive tokens from the securities laws in Wyoming. The third, and that was the big one that gained the worldwide attention. The third one is House Bill 101, which allows corporate record keeping on a blockchain, and all that implies down the road as well. The fourth is House Bill 126, which is the one that goes into effect on July 1st, which allows for the formation of series LLCs within Wyoming. And then the fifth one is the only one that actually originated in the Senate, and that's Senate File 111, which exempts cryptocurrencies from property tax within Wyoming. Wyoming has no state income tax, by the way, all of you that want to compare it to California. And so what we were, as a group, were afraid of was that then the cryptocurrency transactions could be viewed as taxable in Wyoming. So Senator Driskill went ahead and helped draft a bill that exempted those. So those are the 5 bills. Any?
Thanks for that. Amazing. Now, right? Think about that, guys. Exempt from property tax, and that same bill made cryptocurrency a valid form of trade. So it actually made it a valid form of trade for contracts and things of this nature. Let's talk about filing a business. You've sold us. You got us. 5 laws. We're amazed. We want to file a business in Wyoming. Rob, walk us through it. Tell us how we do it and why.
Okay, and thank you again for everybody having us here. We certainly appreciate it. I do want to take a step back. 2 people who are not here who were integral in this process were Caitlin Long and Tyler Lindholm, State Rep Tyler Lindholm. So we owe them a lot. And some of this came from, I was raised in Wyoming, but I've lived outside of the state for a long time, but I've always maintained Wyoming LLCs. And so I'm on LinkedIn, and I've known Caitlin since college, and I know Caitlin to be a very smart person. So I see her starting to talk about blockchain, and I'm like, okay, well, if Caitlin's talking about blockchain, maybe this is something worth investigating. And at the time, she was working with Symbiont and was promoting the Delaware Blockchain Initiative. So I go in, read, first of all, what is blockchain? What the F is blockchain, and who cares? And so somebody sent me to Coin Center or CoinDesk or one of these blockchain 101 things, and okay, all right, okay, that's what it is. And then we read the Delaware Blockchain Initiative, and my first thought is, no, this belongs in Wyoming. This do not go to Delaware. The value system of Wyoming, the ethos of our people, the way we treat people, the way we treat businesses, this belongs in Wyoming. Consequently, Delaware did pass the laws, but they didn't implement them because the registered agents, the lawyers, the accountants, the people making money off the system, the people screwing you guys, they stopped it. And they said, we're not going to implement, and they got involved and bogged down in politics. So, same time, fast forward to Wyoming, we had one issue with the Money Transmitters Act that was causing a lot of people to talk about this because the exchanges couldn't operate in the state. And so there was already a little bit, legislators were hearing about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, because just random everyday folks were calling them up, why can't I open a Coinbase account? So that actually was our sort of genesis. Caitlin tried to donate Bitcoin to the University of Wyoming. That couldn't be done. So the long and the short of it is I get with Tyler and Ogden and say, hey, what can we do? Let's start off with the Corporate Records Act. Well, one, the cryptocurrency exemption was an easy one. Then came the Corporate Records Bill, which is really what we were pushing. And so to that end, and I'll hand it back to David here in a second because he can talk about really the tax value on Wyoming, but it's to me, just sort of looking at this thing, I see this community, I see this forming marketplace that exists whether Wyoming likes it or not. It exists, this marketplace, these people participating freely in this activity they're here whether you choose to accept them or not. So why don't we choose to accept them? Why don't we invite them into our state? And why don't we start talking about bills and laws that will create an environment of assurance for them? Because I think everybody here, the investors, we want to appeal to the investor, to the developer, and to the consumer, so they all have some assurances that they're in a fair environment to operate. And so they know that I'm not going to get screwed on my investment if I put money into it, or there's a few checks and balances, but we're not telling them what to do once they get inside that regulatory environment, and we're not going to come down on them harsh. So that's really where this came about. The other bills followed, but the LLC, the Wyoming LLC, and the cryptocurrency community, the blockchain community, are a marriage made in heaven. That's where this whole thing started. All the other bills, particularly the ICO bill, was one that's basically we just said, screw it, let's try it and see what we can get through. That we went to Coin Center, Marco Santori, Consensus was really helpful on that. Lewis Cohen, a lot of the Caitlin Long, a lot of the big names helped us with the ICO bill, and that was really just like, let's just throw it out there and see what sticks. So to that end, I will hand it back to David, and then we'll let Ogden and them talk a little bit. But really, we believe that you guys belong in Wyoming. We want you to be in Wyoming. We welcome you. We're not going to come down on you. We're going to offer you backup and support, not only through our lawyers, our accountants, and the people in the system, but also through our government officials and our elected officials. And one of the great things about Wyoming is there's a low barrier of entry. If you don't know somebody, you know somebody who knows somebody. You don't have to go pay some lobbyist to hire them to go meet somebody who's a decision maker. You can see that guy at the coffee shop, or you can talk to him, or you can go to his house and knock on his door. And that's how we got this stuff done so quickly, because it was person to person. And let me tell you something else. None of this would have happened without a guy like Ogden Driskill. All of us young kids are out there talking about crazy stuff that these old conservative legislators don't know anything about. But then you get somebody like Ogden Driskill pulls them aside and he says, hey, this stuff is okay. And they're like, what the hell is blockchain? Get a rope. And Ogden goes, no, it's okay. These guys know what they're doing. Oh, by the way, there's no cost to the state here. And you're talking about economic diversification, economic development. This is an easy one, guys. This is a layup. This is a freebie. And that's what happened. And so we were able to really pull it together. Now we get into beef chain and some of these other, we start bringing some of the other industries in Wyoming into the blockchain universe, the ranchers, the mineral people, all that. All of a sudden you have a powerful economic coalition that's going to support future blockchain advancements, future blockchain bills. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring other industries into the blockchain universe so they have a stake in making sure that we build this stronger foundation. So anyway, I will let that go. Maybe Ogden can talk now.
Let me ask you a question, Ogden, because Ogden really is driving, as we already discussed, this task force within the legislature that not only got this done, which is incredible, but is already working on the next set of legislation. So tell us what that's like, what you're looking at, and why.
Thanks very much. Thank all of you for giving us the time and ability to be here. Wyoming really reaches out and is trying to be there. So with the task force, we're looking at the next layer. We passed these 5 bills. We're now reaching out to all of you and say, what more do you need to make the environment work right for you? Which is it's kind of a backwards way of government. Generally, you see guys like me out there saying, hey, we're going to tell you how to do business. What we're trying to do is say, how can you help us pass laws to make business more favorable? And so a handful of things task force is looking at is we're actually looking at creating a non-insured banking industry. Right now, for all of you that have accounts, there's no way for you to put any money into an actual account because the feds have their thumb stuck on top of you via FDIC rules. We found out via our committee we can actually create a bank in Wyoming that is non-insured, and we can accept that. We're working through that right now. It's going to be it's going to make the blockchain bills look simple. Banking industry hates it both on a national level and a state level. We're looking at going to blockchain technology to digitize our courthouses and our Secretary of State. Hopefully Wyoming will be the first state that uses blockchain technology top to bottom in our courthouse. So you're going to be able to have verified documents that anybody can pull up and get to. We're really looking for ways to be creative. For most of you, your image probably is about what you're looking at with me. It's an old cowboy, and you think about cowboys, energy, and not anything about technology or that end of the world. I'm telling you that they fit hand in hand. Interestingly enough, that the ag world has to live on kind of a cutting edge to stay alive. Phenomenally embraced. You know, the other part we went into, it's outside of the committee, was with Rob. We actually were looking for applications of blockchain, and a company called T Foods did a conference call with us. I listened to the call. I was like, well, hell, our food's safe everywhere. Why would anybody really worry about it? And they explained to us what happens overseas with what gets fed to chicken and hogs, and you end up eating tainted meat. So blockchain technology is cutting edge in the food industry. I immediately said there's a use for this. Rob and I got off the phone, formed the first set of blockchain calves in the United States. So we're actually putting it on the ground. My calves are all tagged, they're all blockchain verified, and hopefully they'll be all the way to the plate. Hopefully someday in California you're going to be able to pick a menu up and look at that menu and know exactly where those calves came from and what they were. It's applicable very much in your food industry as well. So California makes Wyoming look tiny. Every carrot you eat, every lettuce, all of it, the verification. So you guys are on the cutting edge. It's so much more than cryptocurrency for us. Wyoming is truly trying to be the leader in it. What we want to do is have you reach out to us, say, what do you need to make your business run right? And we're going to do it. I can tell you, as a senator sitting here, Representative Lindholm's the same, and I'm going to give him the pat on the back that Rob did. It's tragic he's not here, because he was really truly the driver of it as far as getting it on the ground. He Rob, David, and a lot of others later, but they did it. And it's unbelievable in any state to see 5 bills that are linked pass in that fashion in that amount of time. Generally, these type efforts will take a decade and multiple attempts to get it done. I'll pass back down the line.
Amazing. I mean, when do you hear a government official say that, right? Unbelievable. Tell us a little bit about the nuts and bolts, feet on the ground, starting a business. I mean, I read these laws and I say, are you telling me that I can file a company, an LLC, it could be an exchange, that exchange could issue or could exchange utility tokens to investors within the state of Wyoming who are Wyoming domiciled, and it doesn't have to register anything?
Actually, there is a registration process for utility tokens, and it goes through the Secretary of State's office. That is another thing we're going to be attacking as a task force too. When we were passing, or when we were working the laws through the legislature, the Secretary of State's office was very adamant about retaining regulatory control over the tokens, even though we were exempting them from securities laws. And so one of the things the task force is looking at now is to officially take the token legislation, take the statutes, and lift them out of the securities statutes and place them squarely within property law, which is meeting some resistance as well. And by the way, before we met as a task force, I agreed to speak to the Wyoming Bankers Association in September, right before the next task force meeting, before we decided to present legislation that they're going to hate. So thanks, guys. I mean, it's going to be a fun meeting. But let's talk a little bit about taxes in Wyoming. Wyoming is a zero income tax state. We have we're consistently rated as if not the lowest. No, I think in the last 5 of the surveys I've seen, we are the lowest tax state for businesses in the union. And so when you look at creating a tax structure within Wyoming, you have very beneficial LLC laws. And so you can register a business in Wyoming through
blockchainllc.io.
.io. You can register your business. You can register the LLC. You can elect C Corp taxation, which means that you're automatically subject to the new 21% C Corp tax rate as opposed to any of the other state tax rates. You can also bring on investors that, let's say a foreign investor comes in, and you can offer them things like the portfolio debt exemption, so they have zero tax in taking interest payments out of the company, out of the United States. You have all of these options of structuring now that you have within Wyoming, and Wyoming becomes at that point a marvelous choice for both entity and development within the state. So I think that's the essence of structuring in Wyoming, and one of the ways in which every business can benefit from having a Wyoming entity in their structure.
Krista, as a consultant, a blockchain consultant, bringing companies to the state of Wyoming, what do you see as the draw?
Well, I want to speak to the authenticity and why I went there in the first place. I'm based down in Denver, and I was working for a company called BullPay, which is a crypto acceptance platform and a blockchain development company. And just heard about, I'm trying to think about how I originally heard about it. I think that I had seen an article about the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition and thought, got to figure out what they're doing, because I'm in Denver. I mean, proximity-wise, it's really easy to get up there. They held a conference call one afternoon. I was actually skiing at Arapahoe Basin, and I was struggling to get back into an area where I had reception so I could actually attend the call. So I'm actually driving down the Continental Divide trying to patch into this conference call, and I did, and listened to the Wyoming Blockchain Coalition speak and what they were going to do for innovation, for BullPay and for anyone in the crypto space, blockchain space, was fascinating to me. So I started to go to the state in February and participate in the legislation, really just listening, being supportive from a consultant's point of view and bringing the tech point of view from BullPay to the process. And what I want to speak to is the authenticity. I've heard it said, well, you know, there are a few people up there, it's a small legislature, they can get things done quickly, it must have been easy for them. It was a very authentic process. Watching those bills go from the representative side of the House and watching Tyler Lindholm and his team on that side, and then watch it go over to the Senate and back and forth and all of the hearings. It was a very arduous, well-considered process that presented a suite of, you know, very effective bills. So, you know, that authenticity is really what I wanted to point to. The other thing I want you to know about Wyoming is that it is a cattle culture. I think there's something like 2.2 million cattle and something like 539,000 people, just to give you an idea. And in terms of the authenticity of the projects, I was actually up with Tony Rose and Rob and the beef chain team a couple of weeks ago, standing in the middle of a cattle field, and we watched something like 130 cattle be branded. Wasn't able to be at Ogden's branding. This was actually Bonita Carlson's ranch up in Gillette. But this is real. We watched these cattle be branded to join the blockchain coalition. John Sutton was there. It's really amazing, and to see how organic and how real all of this is, and it's based upon these authentic bills that went through the paces. I think one of the things that I really admired about Wyoming was the intellect. behind everything. So I'm a consultant in the space, but to see these guys, Ogden, Tyler Lindholm, Caitlin was a wonderful leader, Rob, David, everybody on the coalition, carrying on a pretty sophisticated conversation, asking each other very, very difficult questions, and then, getting it passed through. Again, quite arduous, and they went through the right paces to get it done. So the thing that I'm most impressed with is all the authenticity and kind of reality behind all of this. So I think that you should all feel really great about what's going on in Wyoming from that perspective, in addition to all of the benefits that the bills can bring companies looking to re-domicile there or get started there.
How many new filings did you see after, let's say, January 2018, when you were at least announcing the pending laws?
We don't have an exact number on new filings, and again, some of the bureaucrats in the Secretary of State's office we're looking for new jobs for them for next year. So I hope they're watching this. I got your number, bureaucrat. But what we have done is we've searched key terms, and since these bills passed, there's probably about at least 200 to 300 companies now in Wyoming that have blockchain, cryptocurrency, or some other form of that in their names that have registered since then. And actually, I'm talking to people all the time that, 2 or 3 today, oh, hey, we registered just last week in Wyoming, or we did this, or we did that. Now, one of the things I would say, another reason why you want to work with blockchainllc.io is because we have an actual attorney in Wyoming who was involved in the laws. He's working in the laws. He knows this. A lot of these, if you go online and you just find Wyoming Easy Corp or some of these other registered agent things, there's no lawyer involved in that process. Okay, what they're selling you is a form. Okay, you're going to pay them $200 to fill out the form. They're selling you a form and a lady that sits at a desk. Okay, now one of the reasons, if you don't live in the state, that you need a registered agent in Wyoming is because you have to have a physical person that sits at a desk from 9 to 5 through Monday through Friday in case someone wants to serve you with a lawsuit, basically. And that is really the only reason you have to have that physical presence. But these other people, I would encourage you, if you do form an LLC in Wyoming, to develop a lawyer relationship also. Now, one of the things that if you form your company in Wyoming, we can shield you. The registered agent is the only public face of it, but we do have to have the name and contact information for one person in the LLC in case somebody shows up with a subpoena, and then that's the information. But by the time they show up with a subpoena looking for Bob Smith's LLC, they already know that it's Bob Smith's LLC. So, one, they're not going to get anything additional. But two, if you have a lawyer-client relationship in Wyoming, that is also another layer of shield that is going to protect your information and protect you from intrusion. So, what was my point?
That's a good one. Now, Wyoming trust law, for folks who are very interested in privacy, is one of the strongest defender of privacy for trust allocation and resources and assets. No need to go to Puerto Rico. You can hide a lot in Wyoming. Tell us about how that works.
And I'll hand it over to Ogden. And that's what I would say. One, you don't want to be in court in Puerto Rico, okay? Or you don't want to be in court in Malta. No offense to Malta. But we do offer very strong shield. And when you form your Wyoming LLC, not if, when, what I would say to you is get a Wyoming lawyer that has been doing this for 20 or 30 years, and get a Wyoming accountant, maybe set up an escrow account. That's what I do. I'm a sole proprietor LLC. So they're always going to try to pierce the LLC when you're a sole proprietor. Alter ego, suing you personally. But if I have a system of checks and balances in how my checks are being written, how that whole process has worked, I'm further shielding my liability. Again, the name is Limited Liability Company. And for those of you who don't know, Wyoming did invent the limited liability company. Delaware has tried to steal it from us, but we're here to claim it back. And to that end, I will give it over to Ogden to talk about the banking laws.
And the privacy laws. Talk about the privacy laws.
Possibly David's going to be better to answer that than I am. Is this up your wheelhouse somewhat?
I can talk. I can talk. All right. So within Wyoming, no one's name has to be really anywhere except with the registered agent that Rob talked about. And Rob is absolutely correct. You work your way through the keeping the shield alive, and you will be fine in a lawsuit. What people don't realize, though, is, and what Delaware attorneys in particular will tell you, is that Wyoming's body of law is not as well developed as Delaware's. Well, I would beg to differ on that, because Wyoming invented the LLC in 1977. We basically fought the IRS for 21 years until 1998, when the IRS recognized LLCs through the check-the-box regulations. And our Wyoming Supreme Court has ruled on a tremendous body of law within the LLC that recognizes the legislature's intent, which is to have that liability protection and shield from between the owners and the company. And even in the case of a sole owner LLC, which that was the latest, I think 2 years ago, the Wyoming Supreme Court ruled that the legislature's intent was to make certain that a sole owner LLC had the same protections as a multi-member LLC in Wyoming. So I believe that in that case, the privacy laws, the trust laws, you don't even need to register a revocable trust in Wyoming in order for it to be valid and to be a valid tool. And if you don't have it registered, then of course both the trustees and the grantor in that situation are shielded from public knowledge. So yes, that is absolutely correct.
Does everybody understand what that means? You place assets into a trust, the trust has beneficiaries and trustors and guarantors, and it's not registered anywhere. Tough to find it. You follow me? Switzerland 2.0. So tell us what's on the horizon. I mean, this has now obviously been a whirlwind year for Wyoming. Now the task force meets again in September. I'm going to harass you about banking law. I'm going to harass you about trust law, because I've got my ideas. We're going to work on them. What's next?
I visited with you some on that. As far as the trust law, we're going to lean on a lot of people to help us refine and do it, because the true expertise is all of you out here and you. It's not lays with us. And so you'll find trust is one of the areas we're moving into on it. Banking. Wyoming is, without a doubt, we're going to come with some type of reform of our banking system. I would give it a very low odds of passing on an initial run. This is going to be one of those bills that you're going to see come up multiple times. We tend to handicap stuff, which when David first came to me and we started talking blockchain, I said, you're probably not going to get all 5 of them through in one shot. We did. We're also looking at electronic filings, but we have 7 bill drafts. Do you remember part of the others?
Okay, I think I can make my way through 4 or 5 of them. The banking laws are the biggest one. The second one, we're looking at possibly creating personal information trusts as a form of entity in Wyoming. The third one is removing the tokens from the securities statutes and placing them into property law. Fourth one, oh goodness, and I'm gonna have to look up the fourth one. Those are the big 3 that I remember, and I'll take a couple of seconds while you guys are talking about something else, and I'll find the rest of them.
Tell us about the personal privacy trust. What does that mean?
That's very interesting, and it's based on a law that Vermont, I believe, tried to enact, and I don't believe it was successful. But what it is doing is creating an entity that can be a go-between between an individual and, let's say, a bank, and that entity can verify all of the personal details of the individual and basically guarantee that it's who is being presented, so that the bank doesn't have to have, or the bank or the other institution doesn't have to have all of our private personal details. It goes along with the idea that our personal information is ours. It is proprietary to us. And so we're looking at trying to find ways to create situations where that information can be guarded and can be maintained by us only.
That is incredible. So let me see if I can get this straight. This is remarkable. So if somebody could found or domicile an OTC trading desk for cryptocurrency, let's say, okay? They could buy and sell those cryptocurrencies between Wyoming trusts that are not registered anywhere. They need not register as a money transmitter. They need not register for any other documentation to move those assets between the parties, nor do they pay taxes on those assets, nor does anyone have to know where they are and who they are, and even the bank to which you may be depositing the funds is not going to actually technically see your information. That's unbelievable. Wow, is that powerful, guys? Wow. So should we open up for questions, or why don't we go through the rest of the laws? What happened to the rest of your...
So I've got the list. We've got the banking law updates. Admissibility of blockchain records as evidence. That is that's something where we are trying to figure out whether we can how to help the courts see blockchain information that exists on a blockchain as a foundational form of evidence. Blockchain property records, allowing deeds and titles to exist on a blockchain. We're looking at different sorts of fintech sandboxes. The technology arrangements, possibly defining what smart contracts are. The personal information trust companies, special purpose depository institutions, which that was one of Caitlin's items, and I don't remember exactly what that one was.
That's the non-insured FDIC.
That's the bank. Okay. Cryptocurrency as legal tender. We're looking at that. Corporate law revisions, and that's that is a housekeeping issue with series LLCs, just cleaning up that law. And then finally, the property-based approach to digital assets that takes the tokens out of securities law and places it into property law. That's the extent of what we're looking at so far, and there's more to come.
Wow. So if it's legal tender, you can pay your property taxes, you can pay, if there were property taxes, you could pay anything with a currency, correct?
Correct. That's there. We cannot force them to take it at this point, but they're allowed to take it if they want. The example I've used was with cattle. You can pay me legally in Wyoming now for any product with cryptocurrency, and it's legal. And that's done. That was in 111, the definition's in the law. So it's there. It doesn't say that they have to take it. It's no different than a personal check. I can tell you I don't want a personal check, give me something else. But it is a legal form of tender in the state of Wyoming. It is not recognized by the federal government, as you all know. So with that, we'll stand for questions from whatever anybody has.
I'm going to, Pam, if you don't mind, I'll maybe start the first question.
Yeah, great.
Everyone, really, thank you. Incredible panel. First question, Senator, you talked a little bit about progress on banking in Wyoming. I'd love to hear kind of what the journey. We all know how hard it is for crypto companies to get banking relationships. So kind of what is the status of that now in Wyoming, and kind of what do you foresee on the journey of the next 12 months of reducing the friction for more of that to happen? Thank you.
Okay, happy to answer that. There's a couple things happening. One, we've got some banks actively opening accounts for you guys right now in Wyoming. I happen to know there's at least one in Jackson and one in Cheyenne that are openly, and that's come about mainly because we've started talking about changing these laws. And so one of two things is going to happen. The banking industry is going to move back to you folks and try to find a way to do that, or we're going to try to form another means on the outside of it. Really, the only promise I've made to them is we're not going to call them banks anymore. We're going to call it something else. Yeah, digital custodian, little state, and it really happens that way. Rob's correct. If you're a bad actor, you'll see things happen at an exceptionally fast pace. Tax-wise, it's not going to happen, but as far as bad actors, we talked about it a lot. We spent a lot of time in the governor's office talking about what ifs. And the real answer is this. If things are starting to go south, you'll see laws change instantly in Wyoming. They'll change overnight. They'll change fast. Our real to the bone, what we're trying to do is just the opposite of what you're talking about. We're trying to create really a fertile ground for new business and new ideas for technology. It's not just blockchain, it's all technology. We want to create a state that is a can-do state. It's not, we're going to talk about the what ifs and try to regulate it out of business before we start. We're going to say, get started. We're going to refine that business. We're going to make it better. But we're truly, you hear the ads about New York being a business-friendly place, whatever state it is. We're where the rubber meets the road. We really, really want a business to come to us and say, here's what we need for our business to thrive. That's what I'm telling you as a legislator, what I want to pass is how I can make your business be more profitable. When you're doing that, and you're doing it in a legal and ethical way, you're going to find our state flourishes. That's what built the United States of America. And that's really where we're at, is putting that low burden, use the community itself to keep people run out that are bad. And when they come in and you recognize them, you find a way to deal with them and do it quickly. And that's one of the problems we have in government in general, is it moves so slowly. The bad actors get a huge toehold in something before somebody gets a chance to slow it down. It has to go to a court system. It has to go somewhere. Wyoming's pretty nimble. You're going to find that we're going to deal with that as it comes. It will come. We heard a lot of these same things when LLCs got formed. Oh my God, it's going to be a haven. This is going to be a hideaway. I can tell you with LLCs, they've worked almost flawlessly in Wyoming.
Amazing. I think we've got a question over here. Tim?
Yep, Timothy Lewis, DNA. Thanks again for coming in today. Something you said earlier kind of piqued my interest. You talked about the state registration of utility tokens. Can someone please walk me through what that looks like and maybe how many utility tokens have registered currently?
We don't have the statistics on that. We had only a dozen or so when we had our first blockchain meeting. It is a simple name, address, and I believe a description of the token. It is a one-page form, very easy, and nothing more to it. You find it on the Secretary of State's website. And one last comment, Wyoming currently maintains about a $2 billion reserve account and has, when the economy is good and the tax collections from the mineral industry are very good, we put money away as opposed to spend it so that we can pay for the roof on the Capitol building.
Now, second part of that, is there any way for me to find out which of these utility tokens are registered? Is there a website that I can find which are registered there, just so I can, interested in supporting them and trying to figure out if there's any way we can look into that?
That has not been done yet. I could look into that and see. I mean, one of the things, there's no fee for registering, and really you can fill it out in crayon in about 3 seconds. But the issue is, we probably, I hate to do this, but speaking of taxes, to your point, sir, and I don't call it a tax, I call it an idiot fee or a keep the idiots out fee, is we probably need to charge $100 to file that, because we had like the Wile E. Coyote coin and the
Cannibal coin.
Immediately, the Jeffrey Dahmer coin, somebody registered. There was a couple people, so, maybe there's a little fee or something just to keep from spamming it or something. But otherwise, it's mostly been word of mouth. I will say this, unfortunately, as we pass these bills, the Fed started almost instantly kind of putting a little heavier foot, so that is kind of people are like still cautious. What am I doing? Where am I going? So, it's not been like, a stream of cars driving into Wyoming piling these things, quite honestly, because the debate is still open.
There's also some pretty good sideboards on them. You need to actually get on the website for each. It's not just a Wild West wide open. There's some sideboards on how you can use them and what they are.
Right, and I think you have to observe the qualifications. They have to be for a true consumptive purpose, or if they're not currently available for a consumptive purpose, you can't have marketed them as an investment. You can't have you can't sell them on a secondary market. There are a few issues like that. Right.
You can't sell them on a secondary market, to clarify.
They can be resold, though.
But they can be resold. You can do whatever. Somebody gives you a candy bar, you can sell it to whoever the hell you want.
I think we've got a question over here.
Yes, hi, my name is Bob Vanek. I want to commend the work you guys are doing. I'm a four-time venture-backed entrepreneur, and I think you guys are providing a great service, so thank you, and thank you for coming. I have two questions, one broad and one very self-serving. The broad question is, I would say that probably half the people in the room who are entrepreneurs can't really benefit from the tax things and regulatory and piercing the corporate veil and litigation. Those are kind of big company, growth company, profitable company problems. I would say most entrepreneurs right now in the crypto space, despite the flood of money that went into it, still need seed capital, angel capital, growth capital. What is the venture, hedge fund, angel investment community like in Wyoming? That's the broad question. And then the specific question is, are you guys doing anything around gambling, gaming, and fantasy sports? Any legislation in that space?
Well, that's right up my alley all the way across, I can tell you.
Gambling and gambling, that's all.
The legislature is directly dealing with the possibility of a state gaming commission. We don't know what we're doing. Wyoming has a lottery presently. You can do some gambling in the bars, and there's some different things, but it's becoming now, we've got historic horse racing, which is, I don't know how to put it any other way, it's a slot machine. So we've got Indian gaming. So the state is actively right now looking at how we deal with gaming and what we want to do with it, so we've got a consistency across it. Right now it's scattered, so that end of it I can tell you is happening. What was your first question again?
Angel and investment community.
Oh, they're kind of all snuggled up in a little town called Jackson in Wyoming, and so we've actually got immense amounts of that end of the world, but they all lay around Jackson Hole, Wyoming. As far as out in the middle of the state, handful of scattered people. Wyoming's an interesting place. The state is absolutely full of Forbes-type people. It's very wealthy people own ranches and have investments all over Wyoming. So interestingly enough, guys like me end up being friends with numbers of the billionaires that someone would never see in California, because Wyoming's such a little state and it's got a reputation that they're not threatened to be with us. My next door neighbor at home's John Dorrance, Campbell Soup. His kids went to school in the public school, which is kind of interesting.
And I would actually differ a little bit on your assessment that the LLC and the statutes and everything are only for medium and large profitable companies. A couple of things that you look at: if you structure in the beginning as a limited liability company taxed as a partnership, you can pass through losses to the investors. If you have an adequate shield and the company ends up going out of business, you can't pierce the veil and go after the founder and the originators of the company. These are all real important things to consider. Even as a startup, you have to consider the tax consequences of being able to pass through those losses. You have to be able to to structure for the future, and with the flexibility that a Wyoming limited liability company offers, you have that flexibility for the future, especially with the federal tax treatment available now as well.
I think we got time for one more question right here.
Hi guys, Emmanuel Orlando, Shoemaker Mallory. I love what you guys are doing, so congrats everyone. We look forward to working with Wyoming through our own client base. But I have two questions actually, I'll try to make it quick. First is on the much less interesting front as compared to utility tokens. I was wondering on the other side of the spectrum, security tokens and equity tokens, if you guys have examples of any companies that launched an equity token or a token that was tied to ownership of an LLC unit or of a corporate stock, first of all. Second of all, in terms of fundraising in Wyoming, in terms of securities laws, what are the types of exemptions that that issuers could use to fundraise in Wyoming, presuming you go through a federal exemption that allows friends and family raises and relates to the state laws? And then third, on the utility token front, have you guys actually launched has a company actually launched a utility token from Wyoming and fundraised?
Time for one question.
Utility.
One question.
All right.
Pick one. Go with one. I think they already talked about the exemptions a lot. Okay, the first one.
Yeah. So yeah, the equity token, if a token tied to ownership of a company. You guys talk about
Okay,
that.
I don't know of any examples yet. Wyoming follows the federal, our traditional or our regular securities laws follow the federal exemptions, and as a matter of fact, Wyoming even, if you're a registered investment advisor, I think we're one of the few states left where you actually go through the SEC to become one. So our securities laws follow the federal laws. On the second front, like I said, I don't have any examples of anything so far, except I do know that we should be hearing from a company later this afternoon, and I'll pique your interest, that has actually decided to issue their utility token through Wyoming, and it is a very exciting venture, I think. So.
And with that, I want to get you guys ready for probably the stage dive of what's going to happen, of people asking for your cards. I want to thank Krista Pontius. I want to thank David Pope. I want to thank Rob Jennings and the great Senator Driskill for all of your information, all of your help, your enthusiasm, your support, and your open-mindedness. The blockchain community thanks you. DNA thanks you. I thank you. Thanks, everyone.